Okay, we're back for day number 2, and I'm going to show you. As I mentioned last night, I let the pot simmer for about an hour and a half. Let all that meat break down. Actually, it took me a little bit longer. I left it on for an extra roughly 35 minutes, so a little over 2 hours actually. And I let that pot completely cool down. And once it was completely cool, I put it in the refrigerator overnight. And again, I did this for 2 reasons. One, to let all that fat kind of settle at the top of the pot, and I can then skim that off and reduce the fat content of this meal. And then secondly, to let that meat really soak in that juice all night long, which gives it more flavor. Okay, so I'm going to show you what this looks like now as I brought this pot out of the refrigerator. And we're going to skim this fat off the top, and then we're going to return it to the cooktop and let it come to rise that temperature very slowly to a simmer. Okay, and then we will continue with the rest of the prep for the other half of this meal, which are the onions and the noodles. Get those ready prepared for the soup. Okay, so here's the pot. I just took it out of the refrigerator, and if I open this up, you will see that this is hardened to a layer of fat on the top. And so we're going to try to skim that out of this bowl. And then we will put the pot back on the stove, like I said, and we'll start to bring it up to a slow simmer. Okay, but you can see quite a bit of fat here, and we'll start to get this out of here and throw it away. Okay, so I just take one of these little, I have these little metal spatulas. I can easily kind of get underneath this, and you can see there it is. There's your soup underneath, and with this layer of fat. So I'm going to grab us a little bowl to put this stuff in. We'll just move this here. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. Get underneath there, and then you start to pull up big chunks of fat. Now, a lot of people think, well, wait a minute, that's where all the flavor is. Well, it's true. There's a good flavor in that fat, but we just don't want all of that. It's just not good. So I'm going to continue to get as much of this out. You don't have to be perfect. You can leave little pieces in there. Okay, not a problem, but I'm going to get the bulk of it out. Okay? And then we'll just throw that away. Okay, so I've completely separated. I left a little bit, tiny little bits in there, but I would say I got about 90% of the fat. And all this fat came honestly from the meat, hardened on the top, and so I will discard this, and we will then go ahead and return this now to the stove to make this start heating up at a very slow temperature until we get to a simmer. Okay, so I'm going ahead and put it back on the burner. I've set it to low temperature, and I will go ahead and cover this up. I've set it off to the side burner. I'm going to try to use this main burner here for preparing the onions, which is next. So next thing we're going to do is slice those onions. We have, as I mentioned before, we have about 5 pounds, about 10 onions, and those all need to be sliced very thin. And I've got another tool to tell you about that helps you do that. Okay, so now we're going to start to prepare our onions, and the recipe calls for these onions to be sliced thinly, and there's quite a bit of them here. There's 10 onions here. That's quite a chore. So I'm going to use a mandolin, okay, and the one that we use is from the Pampered Chef. Pretty much everything we've ever purchased from the Pampered Chef is really good quality, lasts a very long time. Never had a complaint with the Pampered Chef, and you have to order this online. But you have multiple different blades here, and I'm putting the slicing blade in, and then I'll adjust it to the size that I want to slice that. And then here's your guard that you'll just slide along here, okay? But if you miss, this can really do damage to you. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my cut-proof gloves to wear to protect my hand. I highly recommend that. And we will start to slice some of these onions now, okay? The first thing I'm going to do, cut the ends off these, and then basically I'm going to take that first layer off, okay, clean, and the excess here. One of the little tricks I found when you get little excess skin left on the board is just grab the end piece like this, and they'll just pick it right off the board. And so we'll keep cutting all these onions, get them ready for the mandolin. Again, these are just yellow onions. About 10 medium onions should do it. And of course, onions shrink down to nothing. So it seems like 10 onions is a lot, but it really shrinks down to nothing. And so we'll keep doing that, getting all these onions prepared, and then we'll start using the mandolin. Okay, so I have peeled all the onions and we're ready to start slicing. So take the first onion out here. You can try this. There's little prongs in there to stick it in there, but I'm going to start by shorting my hands this way here. Again, I've got my cut-proof glove on, and I'm just going to and there's your nicely sliced onions right here. And I'm just put them in that bowl. Okay. A little bit of waste is fine. Much easier than cutting them yourself, but you can see these are nicely sliced thin. And we'll keep doing that for all the onions. And you can really start to go fast. And then you can get 10 onions done pretty darn quickly. But you can clearly see why you need to have a cut-proof glove here. There's more onions. There we go. Okay. So we'll just keep doing that. Roll 10 onions, and then we'll be ready to start to saute these in butter. Okay, so the mandolin makes very quick work of doing the onions. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to try to completely separate them. Okay. You can see I've got a lot of them, so I'm just going to pour them out here on the board. You seems like that's a lot of onion, but onions really go down to almost nothing in the pot once they start to cook. I'm just going to try to break them apart the best I can. And then we're going to get another large Dutch oven, and we're going to start to cook these. Now, if you don't have large Dutch oven, you can do this in batches as well. And what you want to do is get the first set of onions in there, cover the pot, and let them soften significantly in about 5 minutes, and you should be able to put the rest of them in your pot. Okay, but that's what we're going to do. But these are nice and broken up, and I've got more right here to do. So you can see that's a lot of onions. Okay, the recipe calls for a lot of onions. And by the way, now this is a big pot of soup, and it will freeze very nicely. You can freeze it and bring it out again for an easy dinner. Okay. Okay, so I've got a second Dutch oven here. Meanwhile, this is continuing to heat up, and as you can see, it has already started to go back to a liquid. We'll give that a quick little stir. And there it is. And then again, as I mentioned, that still has all those spices and stuff in there. We will be straining that, but as you can see, the meats have just completely fallen off the bone. I don't think you can completely see that from that angle, but we're going to let that continue to come to a full rolling simmer. Cover that again. Okay, and then here we are. I'll go ahead and take this little sheep out. I think that'll be fine right now. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and put our butter. Now I mentioned that was 3 tablespoons of butter. Now I took that cube and I broke it apart so that it melts easier in the pot. So I just spread that around the different parts of the pot. Go ahead and turn that on, start to get that to melt. And then we will start to add our onions and brown those onions. Okay, and we'll get them to a nice golden brown. Okay, as you can see, the butter is softened, and we're going to start to add our onions in here. So just grab a handful of onions and go ahead and put them in there. And then I'm going to take the tongs again, and I'm going to just kind of try to coat those in that butter by moving around. Okay, and again, because we have a lot of onions to put in here, I'm going to close that pot for about 5 minutes, and then those onions will really condense, and then we'll put the rest of the onions in there. Okay, so there you go. It's really nice. Big pot of onions. Like garlic, I really love onions. And this is relatively small amount of butter for all these onions. That surprisingly, it'll do the trick. And again, the Le Creuset Dutch ovens really conduct heat well, so that will be good. I'm also going to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of salt on the top. Okay? So you can salt those onions. And turn around, try to coat them a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and put that top on for about 5 minutes and let those condense, and then we'll add the rest of the onions. Okay, so we're back. It's been about 5 minutes, and as you can see, those onions settle down quite a bit. Okay, and that allows you now to go ahead and fill your pot with the rest of your onions. So we're going to go ahead and add the rest of these onions in here. Again, it looks like a tremendous amount of onions, but it's a big pot of soup, and these will go down to almost nothing. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more salt in there. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and mix those up now. And now we're going to go ahead and turn that up a little bit to like a medium-high. And we're going to start to brown these things in about 15 minutes time. We'll cover the pot, reduce the heat, and let them cover it and let them get to a real golden brown. Right now we're going to keep that heat at medium-high and start to really brown those up. Okay? Okay, it's been about 15 minutes, and this is on medium-high. You can see these are starting to turn color. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn it down to medium-low, and we're going to cover this, and we're going to let this cook, occasionally turning the onions for about 20 minutes until they're all kind of a golden brown. What you want is to have onions that are not mushy, so you don't want to overcook them. And the other thing is you want to start with an onion that is very hard, not overripe, where it's kind of mushy when you peel the onion. Otherwise, you'll end up with mushy onions. You won't be able to do anything about that. Okay? And these are just a little bit more, feel a little bit more ripened than I want, but we'll see how they come out. But always start with a pretty firm onion. Okay? Okay, so while we're waiting for those onions to continue to cook, I've gone ahead and taken the beef soup off the stove. I have these little things that perfectly grab the handles on both sides to easily move that. But we're going to go ahead and open this up. The first thing we're going to do here, smells amazing. First thing we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and scoop out the meat and try to get that meat out of there. And then after all the meat is out and set aside, we are going to we are going to go ahead and run this, get my tongs here, we are going to go ahead and run this broth through a very fine strainer. And the meat is very, very soft. As you can see, I can just easily squish it. We're going to grab each of these pieces of meat. And it should just fall, there goes the bone, just fell right off the bone, which is what it's supposed to do. And we'll set that over here. Again, just try to keep finding all that meat. There's one of the celery sticks, the cinnamon sticks. There's a bone right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this meat, we're going to shred it up, just with a fork. Shred all that meat up, and then it's going to end up going back into the soup. There's another piece right here. It's going to go back into the soup once the soup has been strained. I think it's pretty much all the meat. You can see all the spices still out in there. Okay, there's a little piece of meat there. Okay, so that's probably good enough for right now. I'm going to go ahead and take this meat and I'm going to set it aside, and then we're going to go ahead and get ready to strain. Okay, so I've grabbed another pot, and I'm now going to put one of these fine mesh strainers here. I have this really good fine mesh strainer. I'm going to set that right on the top of the pot. There it goes, better that way. And then I'm going to grab this pot, and I'm going to slowly, try not to splash too much, but go very slowly, and run that right into that strainer. It smells amazing. Okay, so we've emptied out that pot, and now I'm going to go ahead and pull the strainer up. And what I need to do with that is take go like this to clear the fine mesh so all the liquid can get through there. Basically what you're left with here is all the spices, the ginger, what's left of the cloves, okay? And that's the rest of that juice, just settle down in there. We want as much as possible. And then I'm gonna go ahead and discard that, and we're gonna run it through that strainer one more time to make sure it's perfectly strained. Okay, so I've gone ahead and emptied the pot again. Over here is just the liquid, but we're gonna run it through one more time to get any last little sediment from all the herbs and everything. So I'm gonna come this way so you can kind of see if you can. There we go. One more time, and then we will be done with this pot. And again, take your strainer. You see, there was more the second time going through there. There was more to come out. Okay, and this time it clearly went through. So we're good. Put that over there. And now what you're left with is just the broth. And you can see that 12 cups of liquid really condensed down. Okay, condensed down. You can take a taste of this at this point to see how that feels in terms of saltiness. But you can see there's not a lot of fat in there, which is good. Really good. Okay, and so then what we're going to do is now we're going to shred the meat and put it back in here, mix it all up, and then that will be poured into the onions. And I'm going to check the onions in just a second here. I have a feeling that they're going to end up turning out a little bit more mushy than I wanted. Maybe they would need to be more firm when I initially bought those onions. Again, all in more reason why you buy your stuff a day or two ahead at the most. Okay, so taking a look back at the onions, they are a little bit softer than I'd like them to be. So what you do in that case then is you have to evaporate the rest of that liquid out of there. So I've turned it up a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that juice there that's at the bottom, okay? And again, I think we could have avoided this with a little bit harder onion to begin with, okay? But we'll let that steam out, and that will start to firm those up a little bit, okay? And in the meantime, we're now going to come back to start shredding the beef. Okay, so here's our soup, okay? And very aromatic. And so now we're going to basically take this meat, just put it out here on the board, very soft. Okay. Any excess juice you can just pour back in there, it's no problem. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to take a fork and basically kind of shred it with 2 forks. Just start shredding it apart, and because it's been, you can see how easy this starts to pull apart. Okay. The idea here is not to have any big chunks of meat in the soup, okay, but smaller. It's okay to leave that fat there, that'll flavor. Be very flavorful. It smells amazing. Okay, but you can see how easily this tears apart. And that's how you shred your meat. I'm going to go through it all. Same way, by the way, you make carnitas after you're done cooking the pork. You just shred it like this with 2 forks. Okay, and then there's no bone in here. Completely fill off their bones. Now, if you see any, I see a couple pieces of ginger, I'll just discard those to the side. Just a couple pieces there. There's a little piece. Okay, but as you can see, almost nothing. The herbs are all out of this. You're just now left with the flavored short rib. Here's another piece of ginger over there. That looks like that maybe, but I'll take it out. And that's it. Now you've got your shredded meat all here. Take a little piece of that and try it. It is really delicious. Okay, now I'm going to take this meat, my tongs, and I'm just going to put it right back into the broth. Move it around. All back in there. There's one little peppercorn. And there it is. And you can kind of move it around. And that's the, okay, and then we will put that back on a slow simmer to keep it nice and hot. And then what's going to happen when the onions are done, we're going to be pouring that into the onions. Okay? So I've gone ahead and covered this for just a minute. We'll be putting it back on. Anytime you're dealing with anything that has fat in it, take a paper towel and wipe as much as you can out of it, including out of your bowls and stuff. Throw the paper towel away. This will make sure that you're not sending this down your garbage disposal or down your sink. Because hot water will melt it, but then it will re-solidify in your pipes and give you a problem. So always get as much as you can off with a paper towel first. So we're back here at the onions. As you can see, a lot of that juice is now gone. These are golden brown, which is what the recipe calls for. I think they're going to be a little softer than I'd like. This stuff on the bottom is referred to as fondant, and that'll all come off once we put the juice in there and we start mixing the juice up. And let that go just a little bit longer to take out a little bit more of that moisture, and then we will be ready to put that soup with the meat into there. Okay, we're back over here with the onions. Okay, again, if we were making French onion soup, just straight French onion soup, these onions would actually be really nice this way. But for this soup, they might be just a little bit mushier than I want. As you can see, that stuff on the bottom just comes right off. Okay, and when I put that juice in there from the meat, it's really gonna turn off. But you want them to be golden brown, and they are golden brown. So we are now going to go ahead and add, we're gonna go ahead and pour this broth and the meat right into the onions. Okay. Nice, I did that without making too big a mess. And then we're gonna stir this, and we're gonna go ahead and make sure those onions get really fully mixed in this soup. And then we're gonna cover this and let all these flavors mold together for about 30 minutes. Okay, we're gonna put that on a low burner. And we're gonna go ahead and cover that now. And we're gonna let that sit there for about 30 minutes. Okay, so we've got the soup at a low simmer at this point with the broth and the meat all in there and the onions at this point. Very soon we're gonna go ahead and prepare our ramen noodles. And but before we do that, I wanted to share what I'm gonna serve with this dinner tonight. Just a quick little information about what I'm gonna share. I actually made a fresh Greek salad to go with this meal tonight. So basically, you know, just roughly chopped cucumber, tomatoes, onions, and also some Kalamata olives in there, and then one green bell pepper thinly sliced. So very roughly chopped. And now I'm going to go ahead and make the homemade dressing for this. Okay, so this calls for three tablespoons of good olive oil. I always get my olive oil at Costco. It's actually rated pretty high. I've used it for years. It's gotten quite expensive over the last year or so, but I like it. And then 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. To that, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. Again, just kind of mix that all up. Should be using my little whisk to do this instead of the, I've got a little whisk here. This is probably better to use for this job. We'll get that combined, good. To that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. And I got this oregano from my friend who is from Greece and brought it back from Greece. So I'm going to put that in there. Mix that up really well. And then 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper. Mix it up really good. And that's what we will put onto our Greek salad, okay? Okay, so as you recall, the remainder of the ingredients left in this meal are your fresh ramen noodles. And I think I'm only gonna cook maybe half of these and then freeze the other half. They freeze well. Our green parts of our scallion, which we're gonna chop up, and it's basically gonna be a garnish on top of the soup. And then our 2 tablespoons of organic rice vinegar. And this you're just gonna add to the soup to taste. So you may not use it all. It's just to balance the soup out with all of the spices and everything, give it a little bit of a bite. Okay, so As you can see here, and I'm going to go ahead and move this aside real quick. And what I have here is a pot of water, and I'm using this double boiler method because when you're cooking ramen noodles, you want to be able to have a strainer basket. It helps get them out, really quickly out of there. So I use this, okay, just basically a double strainer, double boiler, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a boil, and then we're just going to drop in maybe 2 serving sizes of the noodles, and they're going to cook in about 2 minutes, okay? And then basically we're going to put them into 2 bowls, and then we're going to ladle over the soup onto the noodles, and then garnish with the green onion. Okay, so that's what's next. Okay, so I'm waiting for the water to boil in the double boiler, and what I've done is I've gone ahead and gotten 2 serving bowls out here, and I put in about a serving size of noodles into each bowl, okay, about what we're going to have in each bowl. And I'm going to cook this in batches because you don't want to crowd the ramen, I keep saying ramen, the ramen noodles, you don't want to crowd that in the water, okay? So you're going to cook them for 2 minutes, pull them out, okay? And then we'll put them back in the pot, we'll add the meat and the sauce, and then we will garnish with the green onion. With respect to the, if I can just pan over here, you can kind of see how the soup is looking here. Really tastes good. I did go ahead and add the entire full 2 tablespoons of organic rice vinegar because I felt that it did need it, and I used all of it. But it has really wonderful flavor, and you can see this is a big pot of soup, so this will feed quite a large family. What I'm going to do is we're going to have it tonight, and then I'm going to freeze this, and it will freeze very nicely. And I will also freeze the rest of the ramen noodles here. We won't need all of those. Those will freeze also very nicely. And then if I want to have an easy dinner one night, I can pull this out of the freezer. Okay, but that's, we're just waiting now for this double boiler here to start boiling. And then we will be ready to go. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and add the dressing to the Greek salad and get those ready as well. Okay, so we're getting close to boil here. Want to make sure that this is a brisk boil before you add those noodles, because those noodles are going to cook in about 2 minutes time. And so you want it to be fully a vigorous boil, because those noodles will cool down that water. It'll drop that temperature when you drop those cold noodles in, okay? So we're waiting for that vigorous boil. And by the way, no salt was added to this, okay? No salt is needed for the noodles. Remember, you've got soy sauce and everything here in the soup. Also, the recipe does say that you can add, if you wish, to that soup, again, to taste, you can add some additional soy sauce if you want. It doesn't need it, okay? What I had read about this recipe, which is why I used the full, not the low sodium soy sauce, is because, and not all water, okay? Remember the 2 major changes. I used regular soy sauce, and I only used 8 cups of water to 4 cups of my own homemade bone broth. And the reason I did that is because a lot of the folks on the review said that the soup was rather bland. It wasn't as flavorful as it needed, so they were having to add salt and stuff to it. So in order to combat that, I went ahead and used the full soy sauce and the beef bone broth, and gave it much more richness and deep flavor. And so it doesn't need any more salt at all. It's absolutely perfect. And again, I used the full 2 tablespoons of organic rice vinegar to just kind of balance out all those flavors. And it really tastes nice, okay? So as we've been talking, this is now coming to a boil. I'm going to let that continue to get a little bit more, again, a very vigorous boil, and we will be ready to drop. Each one, again, I plated the noodles for each serving. And we're going to drop that in and cook each one separately. And we'll go ahead and then finish plating this off, and we'll see how it looks. Okay, so now this is a full rough boil, and we are going to go ahead and drop these noodles in. I will grab my tongs, and I'm just going to drop them in, and immediately kind of break them apart in that water. Alexa, start a timer for 2 minutes. Okay, and we're going to let those things, probably get my big spoon here and just kind of make sure that these things are completely separated. You don't want to crowd noodles, ramen noodles in here, so we're going to let that. You see how that immediately took that boil away because those noodles are cold. And so that's why you have to have that big rolling boil, okay? So in order to keep that steam in there, and make it really nice, I'm going to go ahead and put this on. We're going to let that cook for a full 2 minutes, and then we're going to pull them out. Okay, so that's been 2 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and take this lid off. And I'm going to go ahead and lift it very, okay, hold on. What I think I'll do here is turn that off and boil, okay? Let that calm down for just a sec. And then I'm going to slowly remove this, let it drain out. Okay. Shake that there. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and we'll put these right into the bowl that's waiting right here. And then we can put that back in there for the next set. Okay, and so I'm going to bring this camera over here so you can see. And there's your noodles. Okay, those are good. And now we are going to go ahead and add some meat. I'm going to take this and get some meat right on top of those noodles, like that. Okay, and just a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to then see if I can do that a little cleaner. I think presentation is very important. And then we will go ahead and take my spoon here and get some of that wonderful broth. Maybe 2 ladles full of broth. Maybe 3. There it is. Okay. So you've got the noodles and the broth and everything down in there. Okay. You kind of mix it up a little bit, make it look good. And then we'll sprinkle with some, top it off with some green onion. Okay. And basically, there it is. There's your very hearty meal with the noodles and the beef, and then this freshly prepared Greek salad. I was going to originally serve this with some French bread, but I decided with the noodles it wasn't necessary. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this first video. Hope to make many more. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe if you liked it. Thank you. I actually had to come back because I forgot one major ingredient in my Greek salad, and that is fresh feta cheese. The kind you get in a big block and you chop it up yourself. And so I've added feta to both of our salads tonight. So don't forget the feta.